All right. Well, welcome to today's episode. We are talking about how to sell your business for top dollar and should you sell to a private equity buyer. So we're going to just jump right in, and I will tell you 30 or 40 years ago, your best buyer would have been someone who maybe was a supplier of yours or maybe even your kids. And now, literally, I'm not joking you, when every person that we talk to is like, well, I hoped that my son would take it over. I hoped my daughter would take it over. Or I was hoping, our COO or, whoever would take it over. And now more and more companies, the 2 million, 10 million, even the 250 million range are getting sold to private equity. And so it's a really different field now. So we want to educate you. We've done this. We've seen the pros. We've seen the cons. And guess what? Private equity can buy your company for 8 times profit and then do a roll up, right? So there's a really good things about private equity, but we're going to talk about all the pros. We're going to talk all the cons.
Yeah, and so, ultimately private equity has its own little playbook, right? And so we've seen enough of it as we've gotten with coaching that we've seen how they've gone in, what they've done, and we pulled those things out for you guys to talk about because they use certain tactics when they're doing that to negotiate their deals. And that's what we want to share with you today. So they use them over and over again, right? And those are just a couple of the tactics. There's a couple of tactics we're going to go over one by one, and they're things that you need to be aware of.
Yeah, and so he's opened these restaurants. He's done it 3 times, and then all of a sudden he will do it 2 or 3 times and then turn around and do it again. But guess what? These private equity folks, they've done this maybe 60 purchases in the last 2 or 3 years. So that means that they might have negotiated on 100 to 200 if they actually purchased 60 of them. So guess what? Who has the advantage? Clearly the private equity does.
Yeah, and so what they're going to do, I'm going to forewarn you, they're going to come in and they're going to give you an LOI of interest on your business. And if your business is worth $25 million, they're going to give you like a $30 million or $32 million offer on it. And so it really pushes the number up. That's one of the strategic things that they're going to do. And it comes in as a flattering number. So once you start getting flattered by that number, you think my business is worth $32 million. And so they've just wooed you in with that, and that's how they start the conversation.
Yeah, so we've actually created an acronym. It's called F is for flattery, or the very first high offer. E stands for exclusivity. They always want to try to get you exclusive, so you're not talking to anyone else. 3 is A, which is access, which they want to have full access, that we kind of call it, where they spy on you. And then S is they want you to have seller fatigue, where you're just like, oh my gosh, I just want to get this over with. And then they also do something called T, which is threat of losing the deal. So we're going to go over all of these. And so I just want to kind of warn you that these are the things that they're going to do. So if you're negotiating a deal with them, this is the thing. And the first one we want to talk about is F, which is flattery. And what they're going to do in the very beginning is they're going to come up with this really huge high offer, right? They're going to tell you how wonderful you are and how wonderful you've run the company, what an amazing business person you are. And of course they want to do that, right? So give them an example of that.
Well, let me give the other side. They're not going to do. What they're not going to do is come in, like when we used to go in and buy a property, we'd say, the roof is bad. We really need to replace this. This is not good. We're going to have to take that out. And so when they're doing that, they don't go in to take those things out because they know if they trash your company, it's different than a house. You emotionally will withdraw. It's almost like you won't do the deal with them. So they don't want to trash your business. They want to tell you all the good things. And then that way they don't say, heck no, I'm not working with you, and then end up walking away.
Yeah, so they are never going to tell you that your baby is ugly. You know how sometimes I always say, I'm the person that comes in and has to tell you your baby's ugly. Private equity, they're going to come in flattering you. They're going to come in with this really high offer. You're just going to be like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. So they're going to get you really hyped up. And then they're then going to come back and say, oh, well, we just thought of X, or we just need to make these adjustments. Now we need to reduce it $1 million for this. Now we need to reduce it another $1 million for this. And they start chipping away at this high price that they first came in at.
And what sets them up for that is really that they're going to ask you for exclusivity off the bat.
Which is E for exclusivity.
Yeah, so they're going to ask for that, because if you're not vetting any other offers, then once they can come back in and they start chipping away, then they can take it all the way down. So they bring you in with the flattery, then they lock you into LOI, which has a term that has exclusivity. And once they do that, they move that piece out of your toolbox to be able to go, well, I don't have anything else to go with. So.
Yeah, exactly. And, this comes back and ties in with their very first piece, which, like you said, is that high offer. And then you kind of feel like, oh my gosh, no one would ever offer me that high, right? So that's the first emotion that they give. And then at some point, unfortunately, the deal becomes so low that the deal itself is no longer nearly as good as it was originally. And then you kind of defeat it, and you don't want that. So let's talk about the best way of them selling the company.
Well, the first thing you want to do is get multiple offers. We say it all the time that ultimately your first offer is only as good as your second offer. So you're going to have to go out there and get interest from that. And so you're also going to want to make sure that you're clearly screening the buyers. So when you're going through, you're going to make sure that you're checking all the things, which is what we help with when we're doing that. You're going to want to make sure that you have a consulting person to do that. And so
I think the competitive process is what makes sure that the number one, you've got a great deal, and number two, that the great deal is more likely to stay. I mean, it is what it is. If you think somebody else wants the business, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, someone else wants it as well. Yeah. And so if you've only got one person on the table, it's kind of like when you're dating in the beginning. Like if they just think no one else wants you, then
sure. Yeah.
So when we're coaching people through this process, we want to make sure that when they put in an LOI, we literally will cross out that exclusivity area. Now, sometimes we'll allow it if it's like 15 days.
And later in the day, maybe.
Yeah, or if it's a really small window, we'll allow it. I just did a deal that they asked for exclusivity, and it was like 15-day window. Like, we're not going to be dying over 15 days. So that's okay. But in the most part, we're crossing out anything that says exclusivity. And then on top of that, we're always in conversations with other potential buyers. We've got 3 or 4 people that are always looking. But let's say someone's a business broker and they don't have that situation.
Well, I mean, ultimately, we talk about this even with some of the coaching clients. Is like, we'll always take a look at a business. And if we're taking a look at it, you do have another potential interested party, right? And so you're trying to use the leverage of the other buyer interested. So which means, I'll give you an example, because this is why you want to get to this place. If I was coming in, I was going to buy a house at $200,000. I just wasn't sure if I was getting a good deal or not, right? And then you told me someone else has offered me $200,000. Now all of a sudden I feel safe. I'm like, okay, cool. So even though I bought it, I could get rid of it. And so that's really what you're driving to. So if you need to, you can have us take a look at it. And now all of a sudden you are in a multiple interested party situation. So you can always have that.
So if they push harder on that, because they will. When I'm talking to a private equity person, we'll just pretend their name is Paul, and we'll say, okay, Paul, here's the thing. I'd be open to going exclusive with you. Are you willing to go exclusive with me? And Paul's going to be like, of course not. We're looking to buy multiple companies. And so I say, okay, Paul, well, at this stage, I feel like we're not going to be, if you don't want to be exclusive with us, we're not going to be exclusive with you. It's kind of like dating, right? So like, and when we were dating,
Yeah, I was like, we were having coffee. I was like, you're not going exclusive with me just because we're having coffee. I mean, that's the same thing. Not that you said that, but you get what I mean. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to do on the first date. They're trying to get you to be exclusive, and you're not there yet. And it's not that you won't be exclusive. You will be. You just don't want to do it too early, because that is going to minimize you later. And if you have to, you can make a joke of it.
Well, we actually, Ryan and I broke up 7 times while we were dating. He doesn't really like me to share that, but we did. We broke up 7 times, and here we are. Happily married. So it is what it is. All right. So in addition to that, let's talk about some other tactics. And the last one that we call it A for access. And you can call it trolling, you can call it spying on people, you call it different ways, but I'm, for the nice part, going to call it access. And what I mean with A is that they are going to, a lot of times they specialize in a particular niche in an industry. So let's say they are really into HVAC or something like that. They are buying all these HVAC companies and then rolling them up and then turning around and selling it later. Well, they want to find out what you've done well, right? They're kind of trolling or spying on, what are your processes? What are you doing? How are you doing them?
Yeah, and so later on, you're going to go into that where you're going to do it. But once you do that, once you get to a meeting of the mind, then you can start working on opening up access. Because what you don't want to do is passing your processes, passing your employees. They can go take any of those things from you. And so you're not going to do that until later on in the cycle.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we do is it's really important that you look at the different acquirers that you have coming in. And then let's move on to S, which is seller fatigue, right? So before we do that, I want to talk about access for just a second, because there's some ways that you can protect yourself, right? Because yes, you have an NDA, right? But what are some other things that you can do to kind of protect
Non-solicitation.
yourself?
You can have a non-solicitation. So if they go in, whoever, once they meet any of your people or do any of that, you want to make sure that they can't take your people after they've met them and come in and vetted your company.
Yeah, and an NDA is an important layer of protection, but it's not a reason to share everything on day one. Like some people are like, blah, and they just throw up on the person and tell them everything, right? And it's kind of like spraying perfume in a room. Like you can't ask people not to smell it once it's in the air, right? Or think about squeezing toothpaste out of the tube, right? Like once you take the toothpaste out of the tube, you can't put it back in. You can't unsee it. Or sometimes people say, like, if you lay down with dogs, you're going to get fleas, you know? So it's like, just, you got to be really careful. And trust is a really, really important thing here. So let's go right into letter S, which is seller fatigue, right? So what do you think about that one?
Well, I mean, ultimately, once you get into this process, what they're going to...
You got that way big time.
I
with
have.
one of the businesses he sold. Oh my God. He was, every day, he'd be like, oh my God, when are we going to sell this? I can't do this anymore.
Well, and then it got even worse is because then we had 2 offers like we talked about. And so once you're doing that, it worked to my favor because it got to the fatigue part, but then I was actually able to go circle back and change some of the terms that I felt like I agreed to when I was fatigued, right? Because I was like, well, the other offer is not going to do it. So it gave you that chance, that second win. You're going to do that. You don't want to have that decision fatigue, because if the decision over and over, you get tired, then after that, you're not going to make the best decisions. They're going to come in and act like they're going to go fast, but then they're actually going to slowly drag it out where you're like, oh, I thought this was going to end. Oh, I thought this was going to end. Oh, I thought this was going to end. And then you're going to, oh, I thought it was going to end. And that's when the fatigue comes in, not when the first time you thought it was delayed, but after that.